Welcome to Real Estate Real World, where we talk to the movers, shakers, and leaders that are getting it done right now in the real estate industry and beyond. Your host is Marguerite Crespillo, and she started this podcast simply to talk to cool people about what's really happening in this crazy roller coaster ride of real estate. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and stay up to date on the newest stuff by adding yourself to the list at www.realestaterealworld.com. Now your host, Marguerite Crespillo.
Hello everybody, it's Marguerite Crespillo and welcome to Real Estate Real World. I am very excited today to have a very special guest. It's kind of crazy, we've ran in a lot of the same circles for a while now. We know a lot of the same people, but crazy as it seems, we have not connected yet. So I've been really excited to meet Debra Trappen, right? Did I say it right?
Trappen is exactly it.
Awesome. Is the owner and head of Sass and Moxie at D11, which we're going to hear all about. She founded the firm to help growth-minded leaders fire up, uncover who they are, and become their best self. This translates into a life, brand, business culture, and attitude that all shine online to attract ideal connections, grow influence, and build a prosperous business that fires them up. A sought-after speaker, she is, in high demand, educator and author, Debra's been spotlighted and interviewed on several platforms, publications, podcasts across the globe, including our fabulous podcast today. When she is not igniting an audience on stage or creating in her studio, you will find her walking her pups or traveling and wine tasting with her husband for her passion project, Women on Wine TV. I love that one. Her first book, Fire Up, Taking Your Life and Business to 11, is available on Amazon.com, and we'll for sure be posting a link on the show notes on our podcast today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So, like I was saying, we ran in a lot of the same circles. Heather Ostrom. She's right here in my hood, and she's fantastic. Love her. And she was saying, you've got to get her on the show. You've got to get her on the show. So we made it a point to reach out to you. So thank you for being here today.
You bet. I do love me some Ho.
Yeah,
she is pretty awesome.
I was cracking up. It was, I think she turned 40 2 years ago, or last year, I can't remember. And somebody did that graphic for her that was the 40 Ho. I loved it. I was cracking up.
She works that, man. She is so awesome.
Yeah, she is something else.
You, Heather.
We did a podcast with her and her husband last year, and I said I'm going to have to get her on the show all by her little lonesome. So we love Steve, but we'll kick him to the curb for a little Heather time. So tell me a little bit about. So tell me what it is you're doing. What is D11? Tell me all this stuff.
Sure. So let me kind of back up and share a little bit about my background and why D11 exists. So I've been in real estate, or serving real estate, since 2002. I started off as a realtor here in the Pac Northwest for the largest affiliate for Coldwell Banker, and worked my way from real estate agent to trainer and recruiter for the company, helping them kind of build their sales force here, and then ultimately took over the recruiting, retention, and training department in 2008. And everybody who's listening to this who was in real estate in 2008 is like,
yeah. Rough year.
Yeah, seriously. It went from, when I started recruiting for the company, it went from like 700 or 800 people a month getting their real estate license to 0.
Wow.
Like overnight.
Yeah, I remember.
They were not getting their license. And so those 3 areas, recruiting, retention, and training, became even more epic for the company because nobody was getting their license. And so I found social media and started using Facebook as an attraction platform. I connected to as many real estate agents in the company as I could, and would kind of talk about and advertise the fun things that we were doing inside CD. And whether it was training, or my partner and I were going on the road to do a fun workshop series. And it really was, we were one of the first brokerages to do it in the country. And so that in about 2010, I met Katie Lance.
Yeah, love her.
Viewers know, yes.
Did a podcast with her too. She's awesome.
She is awesome. She is one of my besties, and I met her on Twitter. She was actually pregnant at the time with her baby, her youngest, and she was planning an agent reboot here in Seattle. And she said, she's tweeting out like, hey, does anybody know anybody in this area? And I was like, hello, who are you? And what is this? Like, what is agent reboot? You know? And so we just became quickly connected, and I was part of kind of I always call it like the Katie and Chris generation of Inman.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was one of her first ambassadors, if not maybe one of the first she asked, and was so just ingrained with that group. And I loved it, and I traveled all over the country under a Coldwell Banker.
Oh, wow.
And I'll tell you, I did that for a few years, and in 2012 in New York City at Connect, standing on top of 30 Rock. And now, you know, I'm a believer. So like I get this like warm feeling, and I'm totally hearing the Spirit say, you're thinking too small.
Oh.
You're thinking too small. You need to start your own thing now. And I was like, what?
Like, wait, I'm not ready.
I love my job. Like, I'm traveling all over and getting to speak to all the great people. And it was so huge and so loud that I went back and actually talked to my boss. And he knew when I walked in the room. He's like, you're leaving me, aren't you?
Oh.
And so I sat down with him, and we put together kind of an exit strategy. He was one of my first clients. He introduced me to some of my other first clients, and I just branched out on my own because, you know, at the end of the day, the bulk of what I do is really helping people get out of their way so that they can actually build a life and a business that does fire them up.
Yeah.
Over those 10 years of working and being a real estate agent, I saw so many people chasing the wrong version of success. They were chasing someone else's business success or someone else's life success. True. And so when they would come into my office and I'd mentor them, usually about every 3 years, this would happen. You know, like I'd see a new agent come in about 3 years, they were like, I did that. Am I doing the right thing? And it was because they were watching some top producer panel and thinking, that's who I need to be, and that's the kind of client. I need to be a luxury agent if I want to be a millionaire. It's like, no.
Right.
No. And I wanted to change that conversation. Plain and simple. It was like, you know, we spend so much time in the real estate industry talking about online leads and lead conversion and all of this that's outside of who we are as people, and we don't do personal development. We don't talk about what we value. We don't talk about what we do in our private time that really fuels us and energizes us. And even more, we don't talk about what our purpose is. So we don't have any connection to who we are. So how could we possibly serve the right people? And so that's the mission. It's the Fire Up mission is to go out there and really create a movement, ripples that help people define what I call their core four. So their core values, they're filling their soul tank list.
Yep.
Their purpose. And then those three, really, I have created a formula to turn those three into their niche statement. It really helps them intentionally define who their ideal client is so they know who to attract, and then how to speak to them, how to tell them, here's the problem you've got that I love to solve, and then ultimately how they want to leave people feeling before, during, and after they've done a transaction. So it's not just about that one moment, it's about how they interact that emotes that feeling they want people to have.
You know, you're speaking my language, girl. You know, because especially now with social media too, right? It has become so challenging for so many to, like, even the way the brokerages are. I'm a little bit trying to figure out my words that I want to use, but you know, you walk in and you see this leaderboard, and the leaderboard is all about who sold the most houses that month, who did the most volume. And everybody else feels inadequate, right? The moment you see that, if your name is not number one, everyone feels inadequate. And a lot of that happens on social media too. When you walk into a lot of these conferences and the speakers up there are all talking about, you know, selling 12,000 homes a year or some exaggerated, ridiculous number, everyone feels like, oh my gosh, I can never do that. I can never keep up with that. But at the end of the day, do you even want to? I mean, I've been in real estate 23 years. I've sold a ton of homes, and I've had all the different levels of success. And I'll tell you, the last 2 years where I've sold a tenth of what I did in my heyday, I've been happier, more profitable, have more time on my hands, more freedom, because my version of success has changed. And I just want people to know that that's okay, and that's exactly what you're saying.
Well, here's the dirty little secret, is that women think this way.
Yeah.
However, in a space where 60% of the sales force is female, almost 80 to 90% of the trainers and speakers are male.
Yes, so true.
And the leadership is male. And so even though a female perspective is how we need to build our success structure, when we're defining that, when we are going out to build business, we don't want to hear the word networking. We want to hear the word connecting. And if we hear the word networking, we want to understand about how it's actually connecting to people, not about collecting people. And a lot of the training and a lot of the conversations out there are very masculine messages. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it can't be the only message. I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations like this where women are like, oh my gosh, yes! Like finally someone is speaking my language. And that's the reality. I got the most entertaining and irritating email from a gentleman who had asked me to put together a proposal to speak at one of his conferences. And it said, basically, "Dear Debra, I'm not quite sure how to say this, but your messages are really feminine."
Like, well, duh.
I'm a girl, and I'm a woman, and I'm speaking into women, so what are you expecting? I'm not going to give you battle and war analogies. I'm not going to give you sports analogies, and I'm going to give you the terms that are going to resonate with your audience. Now, not all women like sparkle,
right?
But not all men like sports either,
right? And
it's a shift and a fresh message that I think people are really ready for. I think people are ready to. I often call it personal development meets business. And it's being who you are and really comfortable in that, so that when you do walk in the office and you see, Joe Schmo, number one again, you can say, good for Joe.
Yeah.
I know that he loves being number one.
Yeah.
But I know that success to me means being able to travel 3 months out of the year and to be home every night to have dinner with my family and see my kids' games on the weekends. That's success to me, and I'm number one on that.
Yes.
And I think that, once leadership can actually embrace that, and once they can have the conversations where they understand what my version of success is and what yours is and what all of their agents are, they'll actually be able to better motivate them. And that's huge.
So with that said, because I've been saying the same thing for a while, like I said, I can't believe we haven't had this conversation sooner. It is the same thing. Is it if 60+% of the workforce is women, why doesn't the leadership reflect that more? Or not even the leadership. Let's take that out of the equation for a moment. Why doesn't the conferences have more women speaking? Why don't they have more women examples for people to look at that are not this, again, 400 and 500. I mean, if you go to any conference these days, I would say that the majority of the speakers are men. So what can we do to change that?
Well, it's all about speaking up and speaking out. It's about voting with your feet and your dollars. And if you talk to your brokerage, your leadership, and say, here are 5 female speakers that I've seen and heard and connected with. I want to see them on stage. I want to be more represented. I want my gender represented, and I want the sales force represented. And you actually have to give them that information, because what I hear so often is, well, there aren't very many female speakers. Well, the reality is there aren't, but there are female speakers.
Right.
And just like there's so many conversations swirling around in politics and other areas and across the globe, is women, until they see themselves in a position, they don't know that it's possible for them. So if more women were to see more women on stage, would more women step into being the speaker they're meant to be? I think so. But I think that they're disenchanted by going there and seeing the same 3 male keynote speakers who, again, this isn't male bashing. I mean, there's some great male speakers out there, but in order for the change to happen, we actually have to take action and say, hire these people, talk to these people. I have a whole group of Power Women speakers who, like, our goal is, when you get the call for an event, asking, who else do you need?
Who can you add to the list? Who
can I add to the list? I've got great other people. And that's a great step, but we also need the men to step up. We need the men out there to say, whoa, like, I've seen the same person time and time again. When are we getting a female perspective? Because we've seen a lot of conversations in the last 2 weeks, right, in our industry about people saying, women are part of this conversation, so their voice needs to be heard. And I think that one thing that I found very helpful is when you speak to things like home wallet decisions, like when I'm talking to men who are like, well, super feminine, and I don't really, I don't know if the fire up is really going to resonate. It's like, well, let's just talk about the consumer then for a second.
Right.
90% of the home wallet decision, especially in a real estate transaction, is made by the female in the house.
Right.
So, like, you think we maybe need to have some perspective, some feminine perspective and some female perspective on what is happening out there, so that men and women inside real estate can serve the consumer better, and that they can serve them in a voice that the consumer understands. I think that's pretty powerful.
Well, so I had a conversation a while back with Lee Brown. I had a conversation with her on a podcast, and she was talking about getting more involved politically, right? Like with NAR and your associations. And my response to her was, so I'll give you just a little bit of background on me. I got my license in 93. In 96, I started selling real estate. I had my oldest son, Jordan, who was 8 years old at the time, and I had a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old, right? So my life was crazy, and I was trying to sell real estate and do all these things, and I decided that I would become a part of Women's Council of Realtors, and I was the president of our local WCR in 1999. And while I love the organization in a lot of ways, that year for me was brutal in the way that I was treated, the way that the environment and the space was, and it kind of chagrined me a little bit to get involved, because it has become so political in so many ways that it's challenging sometimes to get your message across, right? And it's also challenging to try to sell real estate, raise kids, be a wife, take care of everybody. And I say a lot of times, so the difference for most men, not all men, but most men in leadership positions also have a wife who many times is, if they're not an at-home mom, they still take care of a lot of the details behind the scenes, because that's just who women are. And so men are able to go and be these leaders and be these speakers and travel and do all the things that they do because they have a support system at home. For many women, we don't have a wife, right? We don't have that support system. So when we're raising kids, we're away from our kids if we go do that. And so for like me, I'm a perfect example. I'm now 53, I'll be 53 in a couple weeks. And my children are now gone. So my kids are now 20 and 21, and they're off at school and doing their thing. And so now I do have the time, and I have an amazing husband who is very supportive of everything that I do. But now I have that time and that freedom, but I didn't for most of the last 20 years of my career. That just was not I didn't have the time, the energy, or the resources to go deal with all of the politics and all that stuff going on. So I think that that for most women, they're trying to do it all, and something has to give.
Well, so I think there's a couple of things in there. So first of all, thank you for serving WCR. I think that's an organization, I really pray that they embrace
Me too.
what it is that they do, and that they don't let it get too vanilla, because I feel like, I've seen some of the groups start to take like women out, and it's just that they help entrepreneurs in real estate. Like, I feel like they're dumbing it down so it's losing its power of raising up powerful female leaders.
Yeah.
But I love that group. I'm part of the largest in Washington here, and I've spoken at other WCRs across the country, and I love the energy in most of those groups.
Yes.
Right. But let's speak to a couple of things. First is, I think women in general, yes, especially in the 80s, they started taking on corporate careers, and they didn't leave anything behind.
Right.
They didn't leave responsibilities in the home, or they didn't delegate those to someone else. So that's a first big moment for people to recognize that they did. But second is, and we do it ourselves, we say the wife, like, I need a wife. I say that all the time, and I'm like, actually what I need is a personal assistant.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to also change our conversation in the terms we use. It's like, I will feel successful when I have a personal assistant who can help me with the activities that I don't need to do.
Yes, delegating.
Because that's really, that's what we're saying when we say we need a wife. Because that's exactly what the partner does that has the extra time, or is, just more productive.
Right. Yeah, so, delegating is a huge challenge for women, I think, because for many of us, we feel like that's our job. Like, and that's the way a lot of us were raised, is that, like, I know when I got a nanny in my house and a housekeeper, my mom was like, I can't believe you're delegating that. She since has changed her opinion dramatically, but at that time she was like, couldn't believe she's like, that's your job. Why would you have anybody else raise your kids? I said, well, first of all, they're not raising my kids. They're helping out, with my kids. They're helping do all this stuff that I hate to do, so I can actually enjoy my children and have fun and spend time with them.
Right. Right.
But I think that's a big roadblock for many, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right, and I think when I work with mostly women, and I work mostly with Gen X women that are between the age of 30 and 60. That's a huge demographic that's incredibly underserved. Everyone is so obsessed with the boomer who is retiring, or the millennial who's just freaking starting. And there's this whole group of women who are in the thick of their second act. This like beautiful time in their lives and their careers where a lot of them have more freedom because their children are getting older, and they're ready to step into that next level of power in their careers, in their relationships, whether it's the sisterhood relationships or their relationships with their partners at home. They're finally ready to say, okay, so now I can re-engage with myself, so I can re-engage with the world in a different place, and I can show up differently.
Yeah.
And we're excited to do that, but we have so many conversations that don't lead us down that path, that are so focused on the generation before us or behind us, that we're not actually planting into or pouring into ourselves. And so we feel shame when somebody questions us for having a nanny. We feel shame when somebody says, I can't believe you don't have one. What's wrong with you?
Right.
It's like we can't win. And so, big part of the core four when working with women is, once you figure out what your purpose is, like, pour as much time into your family inside your purpose. So if your purpose is to make people laugh, or is to inspire them, or is to solve problems with them, then make a lot of your family and relationship time around things that tap into your purpose, because that's where you and your family are going to connect the most. Versus if you don't like to solve problems and you aren't interested in the fun activities, you're much more efficient than that, you want to get things going, then maybe you make lunches together as opposed to putting puzzles together. You can actually build the time you have with your family out through your core four, because you're actually choosing the right activities to invest in, and those other ones other people can do with your kids because they love those. They want to finger paint or whatever it is with your kids. So let your kids build great relationships with the tribe who wants to do those things. I think, when I talk about purpose, I talk about it a lot in the context of your tribal talent, because I really think that there's this element that we've lost, and that is women have to be everything. They have to do it all. And I think we've all basically at this point said, screw that. I can't be everything. But now what? Like, now what do I do? So I know I can't be everything, but all this stuff still needs to get done. And so if you can go through that process of defining those things and then find the people who fill in your blanks. Like, I read an article the other day that it's something like 42% of Gen X women didn't have children. That's a huge
wow, that
number.
is a big number. That's surprising.
Yes, I'm one of them.
Yeah.
We didn't have kids.
Right.
I have dogs. However, I have so many children in my life because I'm crazy Auntie May.
Yeah.
And when my friends need a break or they need help, I'm that person. And so, but I had to aggressively say to them, it's okay to ask me. It's okay. I wasn't able to have kids. It's all right. Like, I have a purpose in our tribe.
Right.
It's just not populating it.
Right.
It's entertaining it.
Well, we need that, that's for sure.
Right. And so it's being able to step into the power of your purpose and figuring out where you belong also is so powerful for women. And then the shame melts away because you realize, oh my goodness, like, I know where I fit. And my mom friends get some relief because they're like, oh, I don't have to do that activity. Deb loves to do that.
Yeah.
She can do that with them. Like, hey, we need an Auntie Debra date. Could you take the kids? I'm like, yes, I'd love to. So, I mean, that's just a small example of how you can really plug into, a tribe in a different way than they talk about it, again, online with how we market and sell things to people. This is like how you live. How you truly build a village that knows how to support each other.
So I remember having a conversation one day with, there's two parts to this. So first of all, when I was around 12 years old, I remember going and buying, making this gift for my mom. And it was this, where you get the plaster and you paint something, you can go to those little shops and you can paint a little thing. So I painted this sign that said Supermom. And I thought, oh, how cool is that? So I did this whole thing for my mom, and I remember she had it hanging on the wall for years. And then one day she had a meltdown over I don't know what, and she was like, smashed it and said, I am not Supermom. I can't be everything to everybody. And it was exactly what you're saying. It was such a powerful moment. And I remember being sad that she broke this thing that I made, and then having a conversation with her later. And of course, as you get older, you realize why your mom does some of the things she does when you have to experience it, right? And I remember a few times thinking, man, if I could just smash that Supermom, right? Plaster. But the other thing is what you said about being everything to everybody is, I even had that conversation in my relationship with my husband. It's like we many times think that our husband has to be our best friend, our lover, our provider. He has to be all of these things, as we have to be everything. And at some point, you realize that they can't be part of every conversation. Like, I need good girlfriend time, right? Where maybe I can bitch and complain about my husband, or I need good friends time who can help me solve certain problems that maybe he can't solve. And so when you expect one person to be all of that, they can never live up to that, and you'll always be disappointed. And it's the same thing in looking within yourself, don't you think?
Exactly. It's the perfect analogy. And I think that we are in such an amazing time at this point right now on this planet, that there's an uprising of feminine energy. There is an awareness of we know that we are powerful beings, and we know that we need to connect to one another, and we also know that we need to give ourselves grace along this journey, just as we would to a best friend who forgot to pick her kid up at 3:05 and is stressed out and bawling her eyes out. It's like, that's okay. You're a human, and you can't do it all. You can't be perfect every second. And I think just giving each other grace is great, but giving yourself grace is even more important. And I think that we're having so many more conversations like that. So many women are stepping into connection and collaboration with each other as opposed to competition. And it's so, I mean, I've seen such a huge shift. I'm not sure if you've seen the same thing, but wow, it's quite beautiful. Articles, posts, you name it.
Yeah. And you have a very special group, which is a secret group, so we can't talk about it. But you have a very special group of really strong, powerful women that I just love. And I see nothing but love and support in there and encouragement. And I think there needs to be more of that, more places that women can go where it is okay, that you're not going to be beat up or, harassed and it's tough. I mean, it's a tough industry. Like I said, we talked early on about it being so dominated by men. And not to bash on the men, we love our men. But,
oh yeah.
But we definitely need that space where we can go and not feel many of the things that we may feel the moment that the men walk in the room.
Well, that group of women, the reason I actually started that group was because I was at a conference and I had the fourth lunch in a row where women were talking about these really big issues inside the space, not just the real estate industry, but business in general as a woman. And I was like, we really do need a space where we can cultivate positive solutions. And that's a huge thing for me, is I didn't want to create a group that was negative and that it was just one post after another about all the junk out there. Because we all know that things need to change. Right. And so a big part of, or a lot of the energy that I poured into that group is really making sure that we're navigating through the best version of the conversation so that we can ultimately get to our own best opinion about a topic and then take it out of the group. Go out there and say, I've had some great conversations around women in leadership, and let me share with you the top 5 things I think we can do to improve that. And that is why the group exists. It's not so that people can complain or, although we do. Right. We vent. We talk about the hot messes and the successes. Yeah. And I think that's where the power of that group comes from, is that people feel that they can, whether it's a goofy video that is going to make the group smile or really a big issue that does need to be talked about, and things like women in leadership and the speaker conversation about how there are so many male speakers out there who really actually aren't good. They're perpetuating misogynistic and sexist and ageist topics and conversations. And though we also need to use our voice for that, to say no more. Don't call women in real estate little girls. That's not okay. Don't preach at us like we don't know. Don't mansplain, right?
I love that.
And it's okay to step into that.
So interesting that you say that, is because I think the thing that bothers me many times, or not necessarily intimidates me, but intimidates some, is that when we do speak up and we do make those comments about how they should be more sensitive to women, then we're accused of being too sensitive. Mm-hmm. Right? Oh, why do you even take that so serious? Like, I know there was a conversation about how a speaker was getting up there and he was implying that women were he wasn't saying they were the weaker sex, but the way that he was explaining stories was that it was clearly women he was talking about, not necessarily men. And so when you bring that up, it's like, oh, you're too sensitive, or I can't, I was just joking. And I have had those conversations a lot with people that I care about. It's like, okay, what's joking to you is, I've heard it so much in my career that it's kind of not a joke anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of not okay to continue to insult women or make jokes about women or over and over and over again. It's like, I've heard it so many times, it's not okay. And I know that a lot of that has happened or happens at conferences and events and speaker things where it's like, I was just joking, that was no big deal. So how do we change that? I mean, I start with my kids. So after some recent events, I have 5 boys and 1 girl. So I have 5 boys. And I sat down and had a conversation with my son, Philip especially. He's 31 years old. And I said, I want to run a situation by you. And I want to know, what are your thoughts and how would you have handled that and what would you have done? And it's interesting conversations because I think that especially some of the younger men are kind of confused too. Like, we're not sure what we can say, what we can't say, and what can be considered a joke and what can't be considered a joke. And I mean, some stuff is obvious, but some stuff's not obvious. And I think as a mom of 5 boys, it's my job to have those conversations with them to say, this is not okay. This is how I felt when you said that. This is how we can change that a bit and change it for the next generation.
Yeah. What's interesting is I've had a lot of conversations with moms of older children, so in their teens and 20s, and a lot of conversations with, a lot of my friends' children are under the age of 5 still. And so my conversations with them are very different. It's like, how they're cultivating those conversations. And I think that pretty much there's this generation, seems to be like around the 25 and under, that was really raised by us, right? Raised by Gen X. And they're scratching their heads going, how could anybody think it's okay to say that? Right. Because they were actually raised by women who were stepping into their, into the essence of who they are. Right. Versus the men that we're talking about, and the women, by the way. It's not just men who do this. It's an attitude. It's not even really an age. So the people who have this attitude about the weaker sex, or even remotely sprinkle that into their conversations, they were raised with likely a stay-at-home mom who was a Beaver Cleaver's mama, who did all of those details and was in a very, for that time, traditional role. Right. And so it's very hard for that generation, and I get it. It's hard for them to see things change. Change is not easy to adapt when you like the current circumstance. Yeah. And it's like, I read this article the other day that was like, patriarchy is going away. Like, it's going away. You're not going to have that. We're not going to be a patriarchal society very much longer. And maybe in our lifetimes that the flip of the switch will be complete. I don't know. But it's definitely changing. We've got lots of leaders of countries that are female now, and women who can't break into the ceiling of the C-level suite offices at their company are starting their own. Right. They're saying,
that's what I love.
Screw this. Yeah. And I serve the real estate space because of course I love it, and I love the problems in there, even though they frustrate me. So I want to be part of the solutions. But I also serve the network marketing, or the MLM space, and that's a space where 80% are female. 80% of the sales force, and 70% of that 80% are in that 30 to 60 years old. They're basically saying, like, I want to have control over how much money I make and when I work, and I don't see a traditional leadership role fitting into my version of success. So they're leaders in their own way. They're influencing in their own way. It just doesn't look like their traditional 1960s, exactly. CEO. And I think that's, the conversations just need to shift. We need to really start highlighting those. We need to talk about those situations. We need to talk about those stories. And I think that, you're doing that with your podcast. I definitely do that with the Fire Up chats. And, we're going to shift into a new level, even in that Facebook group, where we're going to take it to a level of changing the conversation in the world. Not sharing our conversations, but taking the conversations that are really vibrating us as a group and saying the reason this is vibrating us is because we need to be having this on the planet. We need to start these conversations and really be part of the solution as opposed to part of the noise.
You know, I know that the thing that I love about real estate so much, and I even said this the other day when Brad Inman was making a comment in one of his groups about, you know, health insurance and the struggles with it. And I said, well, you know, I agree the costs are outrageous and the issues, but the thing that I love about real estate more than anything is I am in charge of my own economy. I am in charge of my own destiny, my own ability. I can make as much money as I want or as little money as I want. And that wasn't really an option for my mom, right? So my mom grew up, I was raised by a single mom who worked a job, 40 plus hours a week and made very little money and had very little say in what she did or how she did it. And she made sure that I knew I had more choices, so I give her kudos for that. But that's one of the things that I love about real estate is that my options and opportunities are limitless. And I love seeing more women going into their own business and creating their own space, like what you've done and Katie's done, and so many have just said, well, screw that, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to just go start my own. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to be a leader of my own little part of this world, right?
Well, and even to what you were talking about earlier is when we finally do step into a position of strength and we feel bold enough to speak our truth and say, what you just said was not appropriate.
Right.
I'm not offended by it.
Right.
When you're talking from the ists, right, sexist, ageist, whatever it is, I'm okay if somebody thinks I'm being too sensitive.
Right.
That's what I'm speaking my truth.
Right.
I'm telling you that talking to me that way, touching me there, speaking from the platform saying that, I'm telling you
not okay.
That is not okay.
Yeah.
And when they don't change, I can vote with my feet.
Yeah.
I can vote with my pocketbook and say, I'm out of here. If this conference is going to continue to host these people who speak, inappropriate conversation from the stage, I'm not going to go anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not going to participate. And I think that's the scary next step that a lot of us need to be okay with. That when somebody is on stage and is being sexist and is saying incredibly inappropriate things, we need to step into it, stand up, and walk out and say something to someone. And
so don't shrink the part that says say something to someone, right?
Yeah.
I think that is the powerful part, because I would love to believe, and I hope that this is true, that their intention when they're speaking is not to be sexist. They don't know. I would love to believe that. I know that's not always the case. But I do think that something has to be said to them, because I know with my own boys and my husband that sometimes I've said something, they're like, well, why did that even bother you? I said, well, let me explain why, and why you can't say that anymore. And so I think that needs to be said. That part is so powerful that you have to speak up and say something. Even if you're not comfortable saying it in person, write a note, write a letter, speak to somebody. Because I do think some of the men leaders are willing to listen. They're just not hearing it enough, or they haven't heard it.
Well, and you're absolutely right. That's where the solutions come in. It is speaking up, speaking your truth in that situation. And what's the worst that's going to happen? That's what I have so many women who message me, private messages about, here's what happened. How should I handle that? And it's like, what do you want the end result to be?
Yeah.
Let's look at what do you want the ultimate result to be? Do you want them to ask for forgiveness? Do you want them to write a blog post about it? What is it that you're seeking? Because I think that once men understand, or once women understand, that they've said something that if one person is stepping up, there's likely at least 10, maybe more people who are what?
And didn't say anything.
And they want to, it's especially when they're educators at heart, and they're people who really want to speak into and affect and make a difference, that they want to know that. Now, not all are like that, but you can't control that. All you can control is to say, here's the experience I had with the content that you shared. I believe it could be much more powerful if you left X, Y, and Z out. Yeah. Those comments were distracting and, condescending. And whether you see it that way or not, I'm telling you there is an element of that. And let them do with it what they wish. That's why I say if they don't, you can only tell them. That's all you can control. And then if they don't change, all you can control is staying or going.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, and also the next step is saying, hey, have you seen Marguerite speak? Have you seen Debra speak? Have you seen Katie speak? Let's get them in here next year, because they're going to speak and empower and engage and elevate our conversations from a different perspective.
Absolutely.
I get that you liked this guy, but hey, how about having a female perspective and actually giving them some guidance? Because I think that, again, anybody that's leading an organization with a servant heart wants to feed their people the information that they don't know that they need, or that their people are saying, this, I'd love to get more of this. Like, it's like being a parent. You want your kids to be happy. Leaders want their staff and their sales force to be happy. Yes. They know happy humans are more productive.
For sure.
So give them the instruction manual, for crying out loud. Like, help them out.
So a couple things I want to make sure we talk about before we wrap up today, because we could probably talk for like a month. But is you talked a little bit about, before we got on the air, about doing a virtual conference of some sort, and I do want to talk about your book.
Okay. So the virtual conference, I'm imagining actually it will probably become a series. And it's going to be on, taking our conversations to the next level and really finding the opportunities to ignite change in our own communities. And so one of the things that I loved that you talked about earlier was that, so when somebody says something that I'm like, ooh, I don't really like that, and actually find my brave soldier inside to go up and say, here's what happened, and they do shrug it off. When they say, oh, I was just kidding, or oh, you're too sensitive, we're going to talk about that. And give some ideas, give some suggestions on how you can respond when somebody says that, because I think that we need to be more confident in those discussions. Just like real estate loves to talk about scripting things for talking with different types of clients, we also need to be armed with some bullet points that make us feel more confident to step into those conversations, to wake some people up, and to also shine a light on the people who realize the transgression and change. So we can say, gosh, I had this great conversation with this person, and wow, the next time I saw them speak, it was like night and day. It was such a beautiful thing. I did that. I had a part in that, where those are the stories that I want to start being able to share. So at this point, the save the date for the first is December 2nd. And there will be plenty of information coming out on that. I'll be sure to update you as soon as possible so that we can add that to the blog post and talk a bit more about that. But we're going to do something virtual. I've never done this before. I've participated in virtual conferences as a speaker, but I've never really wrangled one myself. And so there's a group of advisors that I pulled together from that group and just said, hey, you want to go on this journey? And they said yes.
Yeah,
so
I'm excited to hear about it and be a part of it however I can.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do a shorter version of something like this for that, specifically for your audience, because I'm sure there's plenty of men and women. This is not just
who can benefit from
issue. It. Yeah, this is a gender and generation neutral conversation, and I think that's the huge piece. Yeah.
So before we wrap up, let's talk quickly about your book, because I just ordered it. So I haven't read it yet, but I ordered the Kindle version so I can read it because I'm excited to read it. And it's called Fired Up.
Yep, it's called Fire Up, Taking Your Life and Business to 11. Yeah. And I will tell you, so here's the most interesting journey. I'm not sure, have you written a book?
I'm in the process of finishing it, yes.
I love it, awesome. So here's the thing that I learned about writing my first book. The reason behind it wasn't to sell thousands of books. Okay. It was to clarify my message. And this is huge because when I started my own company, when I started D11, actually Katie and I started our businesses on the same day.
Oh, wow.
October 1st, 2012. I know. It's like we have so many kindred moments in our lives. It's crazy. We're like, this is insane.
I know.
So, but because I'm very savvy on social media, it took me a long time for people to understand I'm not a social media coach. Right. I don't talk about social media. And so the reason behind writing the book was to really get people to understand here's the philosophy. And I used it, for things like getting more speaking gigs and things like that. But again, I didn't do it to make the New York Times bestseller list, right? That wasn't an intention. However, now a year later, I have written a workshop based on the book. And so what that did for me is it actually helped me expand the book. So I have a second version coming out of the book in January, and it's the similar content, but it's on steroids. And it's really digging in deeper into the exercises and deeper into the content, because now I'm ready to take it out into the world, not just into the real estate space, but actually out into the world to say, if you're an independent sales professional, if you are a small business owner and your personal brand affects how much business you get, if who you are is your brand, then you need to read this book.
Absolutely.
Because it talks about that personal brand and personal development meets business, and how I'm what happens, this content and this mission and this Fire Up movement is all about what happens before you go on Facebook, before you create a website. It's first. And so it's been such an amazing adventure. The workshop, and with the workshop that right now I do most of it inside the real estate space for like associations, and put together a really fun partnership program for the associations. That's a mutually beneficial kind of revenue model, so that they can actually pour back into their teams and membership because we're working together. Right. And so it's not only about money. I mean, I'm in business. I'm not a nonprofit.
Right.
But that's not that's not what success means to me, right? I want people out there who are finally going, this was a game changer for me. It changed my life. I now know who I am. I know when to say yes. I know how to confidently say no. And I finally know what success means to me. So this next version, this V2, if you will, I did this really fun, I don't know if you've ever used 99 Designs. But they basically, you go in and you say, I need a book cover. And they say, okay, they make you answer all these questions. And then all of these designers put together their own design thought process based on what you said. And then
wow, I'm going to use that for sure.
Fun. Totally. I definitely highly recommend it. I think that I can send you something where you save like $50.
Oh, perfect.
Yes, awesome. And so then they give you like this landing page, and you send that link out to people that you know, and they vote.
I love it.
Yes, and we do, right? Because it's bringing people in on the journey.
Yes, I love that.
And so this next one, like my current cover is adorable, and it was signed by a good friend of mine, and it really leans on things on my personal brand, the number 11, polka dots, my red hair, pearls.
Yep.
But this one is definitely much more intense. It's a close-up headshot of me looking right into the camera, and Fire Up is huge, and it's a totally different feel, and you'll totally get a kick out of this. So one of the things that I was asked is, like, whose book do you want to be next to?
Oh, that's a great thought.
Right? And so I was like, okay, so I want to be in between Tony Robbins and Joel Osteen. Like that for me, like that's the space, right? Yeah. I love Tony Robbins, but he throws around those F-bombs like nobody's business. And I love Joel, but he's 100% about scripture, right. And I'm right in the middle. Yeah. Like I want moms to be able to listen to my messages with the kids in the car.
Well, I'm going to want my book next to yours. That's going to be my goal. It's going to be right next to yours.
Yeah, and so that's like, I think, getting excited about writing a book. I've got somebody great for you and to have a conversation with on the show about writing their book, about writing a story. Oh my gosh. We all have a book inside of us. It's like, get it out. And once I wrote that book, I have 3 more books that I'm writing. Yeah. Like this has now become my obsession. I'm like, okay, so how can I build a business around writing my content, writing these books and doing this fun stuff.
I swear we must be like sisters from a different mister or something. I don't know. All the stuff you're saying is the same, because I've been trying to finish my first book, but even without finishing that, I already have a couple more in my head, and I just have to get them done. So,
you know what I found? Writing a book is all about having somebody that keeps you accountable.
Yeah.
Writing a book on your own, especially your first, is, well, it's exhilarating and exhausting.
Yeah.
And so for me, I hired an editor who, man, did she crack the whip. And it was awesome. I mean, I wrote the book in less than 3 months because of her.
Well, I'm going to need her information, because mine is already really written. I just have to finish it up. And I was just saying, I need the editor. I need that person to help finish it.
Yeah. And the person who kind of looks at it and says, hey, it might, who's not in your content all the time, who can help you get a fresh view.
Exactly.
So the last little tidbit that I'd love to share is one of the things that writing the book and going through this journey and having the Facebook group and having all of these powerful mentors, both men and women in my life, I realized this last year I needed to shift my business model to do less time for money exchange. And because I wanted to write more. And I wanted to do things. And so my mentor, Alex, told me, hey, read this book called The Business Model Generation. And I'll send you a link to it and to the kind of the document that I used. And the reason I'm trying to, I really want to get this out, especially into the real estate space, is realtors, at least the 20% that I serve, right, like the true entrepreneur spirited realtors out there. This product is a creative way to get out of your head and onto paper who it is that you serve, what value you bring them, and who your key partners are in making that happen. And it's in such a creative, fun, visually fun way. You end up with this one sheet, a one-page document with little different shaped boxes on it that help you see your business. And going through that process for me made me realize I need to start doing more e-courses. I need to turn my one-on-one coaching into an e-course, because yes, I love serving clients with my one-on-one, but the people who really need me can't afford the $5,000 it costs to work one-on-one. Yeah. And I felt awkward about that. And I was like, I don't want to feel awkward about that, because I want to actually be able to use that. Yeah. So going through the process, and this is where the magic happened, I found that if I wrote the e-courses based on that, then I could actually use my one-on-one time as a bartering tool to say, for instance, I really want to take my Fire Up movement to Paris. I really want to do more traveling in 2017 and beyond. And so I found a businesswoman who is trying to really put her business online and do a better job with it. So I'm bartering with her with Fire Up sessions for her to help me, boots on the ground in Paris, to put together workshops. And that, to me, like our time together, me pouring into her business and helping her, is so much more fulfilling for me.
Absolutely.
And I'm not so exhausted by all of the other one-on-one sessions, because it's so focused on her. Yeah. So what she's getting is a better version of me as a quote-unquote coach. And so it's kind of like that, going back to that village concept again, right? That tribe. It's like, Absolutely. What do you need that I have, and vice versa. So, and that all happened going through that business model generation book. And it has been like, I'm so excited. January will be, the new book cover will be out, and the new e-course, and like there's so much new life in my business because of that one process, that I encourage anybody listening or watching to like grab a that book and go through that process, because it was a game changer for me.
Well, this conversation was perfect timing for me because I'm going through all of the same things that you were just talking about. So I have the Masterclass Real Estate Academy, and I'm really wanting to take that to be much more online e-courses. And I've struggled a bit with the one-on-one coaching from a time perspective, is maximizing your time, is how to figure out, not that I don't love those people I work with one-on-one, but I feel exactly the same way you do. So this has been an incredible conversation, and I can't wait to do more stuff with you. We will for sure have links to your book and to your page and to the books you talked about and everything else in the show notes and on our blog post. So thank you so much. I can't even tell you, I wish I'd had this conversation like 5 years ago, but the timing must be perfect. So thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up today?
Just be yourself. I mean, honestly, it's just embrace your authentic self, and everything will fall into place.
Yeah.
It really will. It
really does work out. It's hard to see in the moment, but
yes.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone else for joining us today on Real Estate Real World, where we get to talk to all the people who are doing the great stuff, the movers and the shakers in the real estate industry. And Debra, you are for sure right there in the top 10. So thank you so much for being on the show. And for those of you who are listening, be sure to subscribe over on iTunes or Podbean. And we love your reviews. They help us get higher in the rankings so that we can reach more people. So thanks again for joining us today, everybody. And thank you, Debra.
You bet. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us today on Real Estate Real World, where we talk with masters and leaders in real estate and beyond on how we can raise the bar in our industry. Please subscribe over on iTunes. And while you're there, be sure to give us a review. Your reviews encourage us and help others find our podcast. For show notes and hot topics on what's going on right now in our real estate industry, hop on over to www.realestaterealworld.com and add your name to our email. Thanks again for listening. And go out there. Be a part of the elite masterclass in raising the bar on the real estate industry.